Hi, welcome. This is Subramaniam Shankaran from IEEE. This video is about the security governance. What is security? Security is protecting something. So in information security, what are we going to protect? Protect the information. What information? Depending upon the classified information for a particular organization. Now, it is a popular belief that Coca-Cola's recipe is the most popular, most expensive secret that is actually secured. Now, it is a secret for that beverage company. For example, the pizza's recipe could be a highly valued secret for any pizzeria, a Pizza Hut or whatever it is, Papa John's. Okay. Now, every company has got their own secret, they need to secure it. So the information security is subjective. Okay, whatever you want to secure with respect to that organization, you are actually going to secure. Okay, recipe for the restaurant, and the formulas for a pharmaceutical company, and manufacturing design for a manufacturing unit, the business plans for an education company. Okay, so all these things becomes a top secret. Now, the secret for an organization is actually based on the data classification policy. We have something called as an confidential, sensitive, internal, okay, private, okay, top secret, secret. So the people who actually joined me for my CSSP session, so we discuss about the data classification or information classification. Okay, so what is what, etc. It is not a must that you need to have a minimum of 5 or 7 classifications for information. Okay, in any organization, it can be 3. You can have something called as an confidential, internal, public, blah blah blah. Now, depending upon whatsoever classification you actually choose, you need to have people, process, technology to govern that. Okay, so in this video, we are going to have a look at what do we mean by security governance. So we all know confidentiality, integrity, availability, position, utility, okay, and authenticity, non-repudiation, blah blah blah. All these things are the most important concepts of information security. Now, the security governance is actually the process, methodologies, or the framework, okay, that the organization needs to actually have to protect the information. As simple as that. The moment the information is publicly classified, you actually need to maintain the availability of it, okay, the integrity of it, okay, so that it's not modified by people. Now, the confidentiality is actually no for a publicly classified information, because at one side you have what is called as a subject, the other side we have what is called as an object. Object has got what is called as a classification, subject has got what is called as a clearance. Now, if it's publicly classified, anybody in the world can actually see it. If it's internal, all the internal employees. If it's confidential, okay, so only the set of people within the organization. If it's personal, only that individual. So we call that as a personal data. We have got ISO 27701, a separate standard for privacy information management system, which is an offshoot from ISO 27001, the ISMS. In fact, we have a very successful program on certified data protection officer, okay, which deals with the privacy. Okay, coming on to the security governance. Okay, now what exactly is a governance? So let's look at the governance and understand what governance is before we dive deep into what a security governance is. Now, what is the governance? Governance is in a broad sense. Okay, let me pull down my video. In a broad sense, therefore, the system, process, and structures by which an organization or society is directed, controlled, and regulated. That is number one. Okay, it's actually controlled environment. In fact, for the people who are into GRC, okay, GRC into security, there is an standard called C2M2, Cyber Security Maturity Model. Now, in fact, I would really appreciate an organization following C2M2, because if you look at ISO 27001, okay, I'm not undermining the ISO 27001, but the maturity is something which is not measured. Okay, though we have continuous improvement monitoring and blah blah all these things. Okay, but at what stage you actually determine whether the organization is really matured? Okay, the security information security management system processes is something which cannot be judged, but C2M2 provides a methodology for doing it. Now, we also implement ISO 27001. Okay, but based on our experiences, okay, we really judge an organization and gauge what is their maturity. But if you look at C2M2, okay, there is a clear cut, okay, the level, okay, specifications which is actually mentioned there. Okay, so we'll also have a look at the metrics as a part of this particular presentation. But what cannot be measured cannot be managed, and what cannot be managed cannot be improved. So when we speak about the continuous service improvement, CSI, okay, which is also a part of your ITL framework, if you cannot measure something, you actually cannot manage it. You cannot improve it. Okay, same thing holds good for the governance also. If you want to govern something, okay, you actually need to know where you are. Okay, which will require you to measure what is actually happening. We'll get onto that. It encompasses the mechanism through which decisions are made, authority is exercised, and accountability is actually established. Okay, so somebody is held accountable for the governance. Okay, somebody is held accountable for the information security governance. It's a CISO. Okay, for privacy, it's a data protection officer. Okay, now the governance actually establishes a framework, and we have people and roles and responsibilities are clearly established. The RACI, responsible, accountable, consultant, and informed, okay, is also clearly established. You always have somebody accountable for the information security or information privacy. Governance is not limited to the corporate world. Okay, it is for even non-profit organizations. Okay, you need to govern to ensure that you have a smooth sail to reach your objectives. Yeah, so that's on the governance. And the key aspects for the governance are decision making. Okay, the decision making cannot be made in a silo. You need to have a group of people with whom you actually discuss and get their input. It could be collaborative. Okay, so and you then take a decision. Okay, so because we also need what is called out of the box thinking. Okay, I have 26 years of experience now. Okay, so I carry my experience with me, and the people or the team which I have, they carry their own experience with them. Okay, there could be someone in the team who doesn't have my experience, and he might have a different experience. Okay, which is most valuable for me to actually take a decision. So I need to discuss with the people to take a decision. So governance is not an one-man show. Okay, it's a team that is actually required. Authority and responsibility. Authority should be given to the governance team. Okay, so they need to have an authority to take a decision, and they're also responsible to ensure that the decision that they actually make is in line with the business objectives. Yeah, accountability. This team is held accountable for what all the outcome that is going to be there because of the decision that they have actually made, and the implementation because of the decision. Transparency. Whenever they are actually providing the information, okay, they should ensure the openness. It builds up the trust in the organization. So the openness or transparency is veritable base for the governance. Next, ethical conduct. The decision that has been made by this governance committee, okay, should be unbiased, should not be influenced by a third party. This also establishes the integrity for the organization. Legal and regulatory compliance. So you need to have a representation from the legal team as a part of the governance. There are a lot of compliance requirements. For example, in India, if you're a telecommunication company, you have something called as the Telecommunication Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI. And if you're a bank, if you're a nationalized bank, there is a Reserve Bank of India. Okay, and if you're an cooperative bank, there's an ABAD. So there's a compliance requirement. Okay, you have an Aadhaar card. Okay, you die. Compliance is what you actually need to follow. So the compliance requirement needs to be considered by the governance team. So you need to have a representation of the legal team as a part of the governance team. Risk management. It's a very big subject. Okay. So when we speak about the governance, okay, we're not speaking about the security governance for now. When you speak about the corporate governance, okay, there is a framework called ISO 31K, which is actually called as a enterprise risk management framework. It encompasses the IT risk, financial risk, information security risk, all these risks. Okay, for security, okay, we have ISO 27005, which is the guideline which falls under the ISO 27001. But there are FRAAP, FMEA. Okay, you can follow, the NIST frameworks. Okay, there are a lot of frameworks for the information security risks. Okay, but when it comes to corporate governance, we always deal with, the enterprise risk or the ORM. Okay, so operational risk management. ISO 31K is there. COSO is a very popular framework. Next is the stakeholder engagement. Whenever you make a decision, okay, so as a stakeholder, the interested party, okay, when it comes to ISO, you always need to involve them so that they are abreast of all the details, okay, or what all the points that are considered for, for a decision making. So it's not that they are aloof and they don't know why this decision was made. So the engagement of the stakeholders is very important for the corporate governance. Now, so these are the key aspects of the governance, okay, for an organization. Let's understand what the information security governance is. refers to the framework, policies, procedures, practices, etc., which the organization adopts to ensure the effective management protection of the information assets. Usually, okay, when you say the information asset, okay, you need to classify the assets as a production asset, development asset, DR, okay, and then a test asset. You'll have test system, development system, DR system. Okay, all the systems needs to be segregated. You can either segregate or categorize the system or group the systems this way, or it can be an internal system, customer facing system, blah blah blah. It's all up to you. Now, depending upon the classification or grouping that you have actually made for the information assets, the corresponding security and security mechanism needs to be applied. For example, a production system needs to be secured more, okay, than the development test system, because test and development systems are not customer facing, okay, but your production system is customer facing. Your DR system might not be customer facing for the moment, but any point of time it could be a customer facing system. Okay, anything that is facing the customer, okay, is going to have a huge business impact if it is not secured properly. Assume a system of the public IP, anybody can actually look into it. Yeah. So these systems are something that needs to be protected. So first thing that you actually need to do is to identify your critical assets. Okay. When I say, the information classification, when you're going to classify the information as a top secret, all the assets in which the top secret data resides, okay, becomes very critical for you to protect. It involves strategic alignment of the security objectives in line with your business objectives. Okay, now implementing security for an e-commerce company and implementing security for a bank, okay, is totally different. Okay, the level of engagement, level of information to be protected, all these things are totally different. If I had been working for a bank for 20 years and suddenly I take over a CISO role for an e-commerce company, I need to change my thinking. Okay, I need to do a ground up work to understand where the critical data actually is. I cannot be considering only the cardholder data, account information, loan information. No, for e-commerce company, it's much more than that. Okay, so aligning the security objectives in line with the business objectives is very critical for the security governance. Goal of security governance is to establish a structured approach to manage and mitigate the security risks. There should be a structured approach, okay, because the underlying system, which is going to be followed by the people, okay, along with the technology, needs to be uh, properly utilized only when the structured approach is actually there. The structured approach could be your policies, processes, procedures, guidelines, etc. So people, process, and technology, or people, technology, and process. So TPP, PTP, PPT, all these things are actually okay. So people, technology, and the process. In fact, I give this preference to the people first, okay, because they're very critical for security and they're also the weakest link for the information security. So people, technology, and the process. Underlying system needs to be established for the people to actually follow. Okay, so the goal of security governance is establish a structured approach. Structured approach can be established only when you have proper documentation and the framework actually in place. Now, what are the key components of security governance? Policies and procedures. There's an administrative control. We have got three different controls in information security: technical control, administrative control, and what is called the physical control. So the policies and procedures falls under what is called as the administrative control. When I say policies and procedure, I'm not saying that there are no processes, guidelines, etc. By saying policy and procedure, that means that the proper documentation needs to be in place for the people to actually follow it. Okay, so there could be, I could be working for the organization today. Maybe after 2 or 3 years, I could join some other organization. Now, these policies and procedures or the system that is actually established should be followed by anybody who is joining the organization, irrespective of the individual capability. Okay, that means when I'm doing something today and I'm not in the organization tomorrow, the person who's taking over my role as a CISO or CDPO or whatever it is, they should be in a position to do the same activity that I'm actually doing. Probably they could improve on what I had actually been doing. Okay. For that, I need to have proper documentation in place. Risk management. If you don't know what your weaknesses are, okay, then you cannot establish the information security. Okay. So there is a very popular formula. Assets multiplied by the threats, multiplied by the vulnerability, multiplied by the probability, multiplied by the severity, okay, is equal to the risk. So first, you should be applying the risk to the most important assets, find the vulnerability that they actually have, find the so finding the vulnerability, you have automated tools, okay, like Nessus or Nexpose, okay, or Greenbone Assistant, okay. That's something which I really love as a part of the Kali Linux. And you have threat modeling techniques, okay, the stride or whatever you want to actually follow. You can find out the threats, then find out the impact and impact and probability. Okay, that gives you the measurement of the risk. Have a risk register. Ideally, whenever you do a SWOT analysis for the organization, your weakness and threats will get onto the risk register. And if you're going to identify the interested party, internal, external, and their expectation, okay, and if you're not able to meet their expectation, that will also get onto your risk register. Okay, so these are the few things that you can actually start with. Okay, in fact, people who joined me for Certified Information Security Risk Officer program, okay, you know how to do the neutral way of bringing up the risk management program for your organization. Components, compliance, okay, othering to a compliance. Okay, for example, there are voluntary compliance. Any ISO is a voluntary compliance. There's industrial compliance. Okay, so industrial compliance like PCI DSS is a payment industry data security standard. Any telecommunication company will be a part of your TL 9000. Okay, so there are compliances specific to industry. There are compliances which are voluntary, like ISO. There are compliances which are regulatory, GDPR, HIPAA. HIPAA is also a regulatory, and it is also an industry specific compliance. HIPAA is for the healthcare industry, okay, in US. It's also regulatory compliance. So the security governance should also ensure, okay, with all its people, okay, with the representation of the legal, IT, security, HR, general administration, blah, blah, blah. And all these people should also ensure the compliance to a particular standard. Security awareness and training. The weakest link, okay, in the entire security chain is the human. So unless otherwise you train the people on information security awareness, okay, then they're not going to actually follow it. Okay. Now the awareness is for all the employees, and training could be specific to IT. Okay, and it could be a specific on an let's say something to do with information security. For example, you will have a point of contact in the organization from the HR, from the marketing, from the finance, who will be speaking to the information security department. So you need to train them on how to speak to the information security, raise an incident, raise a service request, or create a change record, etc. Security architecture, this is where you will govern, okay, the data at rest, data in transit, okay, data in use, okay, so identification, authentication, authorization, the encryption, hashing, all these things are discussed in the security architecture. And the most easiest way to implement the security architecture is by following the Macumbo's cube. Okay, the physical security, then technical security, administrative security for the data at rest, for the data in use, and for the data in transit, alongside with the other controls. Okay, what the John Macumber has actually proposed, and that becomes a veritable base for the security architecture. Incident response and management. Okay, now you try to secure the information as much as possible, but at the same time you also need to detect, okay, if there is an incident, okay, compromising the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, that becomes a security incident. The preparedness, containment, okay, and getting the alert, and then treating that particular incident or escalating it to the right team, okay, ensure that the same incident does not come in again and again. We have a separate video, extended video on security incident management, which I will provide on the link. It's on the same channel. You can actually watch it. Now, the Salzer and Schroeder, the people who have joined me for CSSP would have discussed in detail about Salzer and Schroeder. In one of the Salzer and Schroeder principle is actually called as a compromise recording. They don't mean that you should not defend it. Okay, you are trying to, you have deterrent control, you have preventive control, okay, and you have recovery, okay, you have corrective action. All these things are actually fine, but you should also put in a compromise recording, okay, SIEM, okay, so that you can do a root cause analysis to ensure that next time the same incident does not come in. So you are putting as much as trust to ensure that the problem, okay, it doesn't enter your environment. Okay, your preventive control should be as strong as possible. Okay, if not, okay, then definitely there's nothing which is vulnerability free. Okay, in the world, right? Everything comes with the vulnerability. And if a threat is actually going to look at the vulnerability, they exploit the vulnerability, they penetrate the network. You have provision to have a corrective action and recovery, corrective control, recovery control, and a detective control to actually ensure that you record the particular incident so next time it doesn't come in again. So it requires people, procedure, and all the tools to ensure that your incident management is actually handled. This incident management is a part of your service management. In fact, I'm a very strong supporter of service management system to be implemented in the organization, so that okay you handle that gives you a maturity. Okay, if I go for an ISO 27001 implementation, we implement service management system also, because without the service management, I cannot measure anything. So as I told you, without a proper measurement, I cannot improve it. I cannot manage it and I cannot improve it. Security monitoring and auditing. Now we had to keep on vigil. We had a physical security in place. Let's assume it's a huge manufacturing unit. So I have got fencing. Okay, so I have got a lot of physical security in place, but I also have a man security. There are security guards standing outside. There's a CCTV camera. Monitoring needs to be there. Okay, you need to have the security to ensure that, and you should also ensure that the control that you actually have is actually working properly. Okay, you should have an SIEM. You should have an intrusion detection system. You should have an XDR, EDR, whatever it is. There should be some security mechanism to ensure that you are monitoring the environment 24 cross 7. And SOC team should be there to ensure that, okay, they support you for the monitoring. Any intrusion, the SOC team receives an alert, they immediately escalate it to the respective department and they take it forward to see if it's a false positive, because you could have a double blind penetration testing team for you, who's going to do the penetration testing without information, like how the hacker is going to launch an attack. In that case, you should first verify whether it's an false positive or it's actually an attack. Then you have to take a decision. But to do all this, okay, you should have a proper team and proper guidance. Okay, and that's where your security governance team comes in the picture. It should have a representation from the IT, representation from the HR, and representation from the legal team, and representation from the privacy team, general administration, whosoever is possible. Okay, you need to have a representation from those teams to always ensure that you have a harmony, okay, in working, so that your security incidents are kept at the bay. Now, security metrics and reporting, we had been actually discussing about it. Even on the previous slide, we discussed about the service management system, ISO 20K, which is very similar to ITIL. Okay, in fact, when I said ITIL, people said no, ITIL is different and 20K is different. Basically, all what I want is to measure a change, measure a service request, measure the incident or problem management, whatever it is. ITIL version 2 is something which I really love. Okay, it's a very simple and very robust framework. Okay, so implementing 20K is implementing service management system. With the service management system, you report security, you report business continuity, you report quality. Whatever you want to report, reporting that becomes very easy. Okay, security metrics and reporting are really required for you to ensure that you have an harmony. Okay, in the sense that how you do a medical test regularly to ensure that okay you are healthy. That's for the same reason that the security check is actually called the health check, system health check. Okay. Summary: security governance is often a collaborative effort involving various stakeholders: executive leadership, IT team, legal, compliance department, and end users. Okay, when I say end users, you'll obviously not involve all the end users. Okay, you'll have an end user representative. Okay, maybe if you're going to have 2,000 employees in the organization, it doesn't mean that you'd have a town hall to involve all the 2,000 employees and ask for the opinion. You should have a representation, point of contact from the marketing, point of contact from the HR, finance. Okay, they will come. Okay, you need to ask their input, they'll give their inputs. Okay, this meeting needs to happen regularly. Okay, I would rather say once a quarter, but most of the organization, when they say once a quarter, they feel okay, it's too much. Okay, at least half yearly is what you need to have it. Having it very often, it becomes a burden. Not having it at all, okay, it's also not good. Okay, you should strike a balance depending upon your organization culture. The security governance creates a culture of security for the organization. Regular involvement with all the users, okay, like security awareness sessions, which could be automated, will really give you an environment where the security is really kept very seriously and people are very serious in following. Thanks for watching this video and keep subscribed to my channel for regular videos. Thank you very much.